internet services was probably the first, connectivity and so forth, and we actually have improved our connectivity using Nex-Tech within the last year. And I can talk a little more about the technology involved in that. But just the broadband technology that we have is critically important. When you think about healthcare, there's nothing more important than technology. And in this day and age in healthcare, there's nothing more important than computers and computer technology, because everything we do is now electronic. All of our patient records and all of that is all electronic now. So we have to have good support for the computer technology, but we also have to have connectivity. We have to be able to connect to where our software is housed. We have to be able to connect to payers. We have to be able to connect to just a whole host of people. And coming down the road is an increased emphasis on what we call telemedicine, which is broadband, two-way interactive TV. We've got patients that interact with physicians and other providers that are in Kearney or Kansas City or Wichita or wherever. They sit here, the physician is in a remote city, and they have a consult by interactive TV. We're using that more and more to provide access to care to patients in our small community, so they don't have to travel for those important appointments. I think it's more because the technology is more available and more recognized. The Medicare and other payers are more willing to pay for consultation by telehealth now than they were even a few years ago. Telehealth has been around for a long time, but it's been limited by which of the insurance companies were willing to pay for it. And frankly, which of the providers, particularly the specialty providers, were willing to participate in that type of consultation. Some of them preferred to do face-to-face consultations as opposed to a telehealth consultation. But more and more we're seeing willingness on the part of specialty providers to use telehealth as a way of cutting down the amount of time that a patient has to spend traveling to see them in their office, or the amount of time that they have to spend on the road coming to a remote community to provide services here. So it works both ways, but it's a greater willingness on the part of providers, it's a greater willingness on the part of payers, and it's an improvement in the technology. Mm-hmm. So it's all of those things that have come together to make it more utilized than it used to be. Oncology, dermatology, we do a fair amount of behavioral health, consultation using telehealth. There's even orthopedic surgeons that do particularly follow-up appointments after they've done a surgical procedure. They'll do follow-up appointments with patients using telehealth.
And x-rays and stuff locally, and then just...
Actually, yeah, and that's another piece of technology that Nex-Tech is a piece of, is that every image that we take now, regardless of what modality it is, whether it's an x-ray or a CAT scan or an MRI or a nuclear imaging scan or an ultrasound or whatever it is, we capture all of those images digitally and then transmit them to a radiologist or another specialist who interprets the images from wherever they are. So our radiology group that interprets them is in Hastings, Nebraska, but it's using a secure internet connection to send those images to them so that they can pull them up and see them and interpret what the images are. So that, that's also, so if we have a patient that's going to see, let's say, an orthopedic surgeon by telemedicine, we can take the images here, x-rays or CAT scans or whatever, and send them either to the radiologist to interpret, or we can send them to that orthopedic surgeon if he wants to look at the images himself. And it's fairly easy for us to push those images to different locations now, much more so than it was even a few years ago. That technology has come a long ways. But broadband availability is critically important to be able to do that. Nex-Tech has been a huge player in that for years. The availability of very, very fast, very reliable broadband connectivity. People, I think, don't realize how fortunate we are right in this area to have the broadband availability that we have. But then, you know, in addition to broadband, in addition to internet connectivity, the other services that we get from Nex-Tech also include technical support for our internal network, and actually Nex-Tech is now hosting a lot of our servers. That's a fairly recent development. Our data management is a fairly complex arrangement. The electronic records that we keep for the hospital, for patients that are seen in the hospital, are the information, the database for that information is in a data center that's located in Hayes. Midwest Health Systems, which is a subsidiary of Great Plains Health Alliance, our management company, operates that data center in Hayes with a hot site in Russell. So the information that we have about a patient visit is housed on those servers there, and we connect to them by a secure internet connection using Nex-Tech. That's been in place for quite some time. But there were other servers, other technology that we hosted here, including our physician clinic and including our internal file servers that have just the documents and so forth that we use on a day-to-day basis for our internal functions here. Those were stored on servers that we had located here, and Nex-Tech has, for a long time, has provided us some network support for those, but the responsibility for maintaining them was ours. We were faced within the last year with the need to upgrade those servers because the operating systems were becoming obsolete, the technology was becoming obsolete. And so Shannon and some of the other people at Nex-Tech worked with us to come up with a proposal to host all of those servers for us in Nex-Tech's data center in Hayes and their hot site in Victoria. And so now the servers that we used to host on site here are now remote and again connected by that broadband internet connection to them in Hayes and Victoria.
Smith County Memorial Hospital has had a long-standing relationship with Nex-Tech in terms of dial tone and internet services. Most recently, the hospital made the decision to use the Nex-Tech data center for storing all of their file servers in our cloud, in our secure cloud. So we now provide services ranging from voice and data to server storage and data storage for all the applications that they run on their servers that are stored in our Nex-Tech cloud. We also provide a level of service for them called our total network security, which means we provide firewall services for all of the data that goes in and out of the hospital, both to our data center as well as to the internet. The cool thing about being able to house their data in our data center is the fact that we have a fiber connection from Smith Center all the way down to our data center located in Victoria. And then our data center is redundant from Victoria to Russell. There again, that's a fiber connection, so we have really unlimited speed. The only speed limitations are the equipment that you have in place between the hospital and our data center.
Well, the big one that it provided to us to begin with was that the cost of upgrading those servers that we maintained here was going to be a $50,000 capital investment. And because we've been able to partner with Nex-Tech, Nex-Tech was able to put together a lease arrangement with us for that, so that Nex-Tech owns and operates the servers and they keep them updated, and we pay a monthly fee. So it makes cash flow a lot easier than having to come up with the $50,000 capital investment that we would have had to have come up with. Additionally, it provides us with layers of tech support because Nex-Tech has such good tech support that we have one IT person on site here. And so when she has problems, either with networking or whatever, she's now got a much greater depth of a bench, if you want to put it that way, people to call on to help her solve problems when she has issues with any of the technology-related things. So it's both a cost savings to us and a greater availability of tech support.
So the benefit of that to them is they don't have to come up with a large sum of money up front to purchase that equipment. Nex-Tech provides this service as a service for a monthly fee. That monthly fee includes both the appliance and the installation of that appliance, and then the support ongoing for that appliance. So it does save them money because they don't have to come up with a large sum of money up front, and we just bill them as a monthly fee. And then if there are things that need to be updated on that firewall, which as we all know happens all the time, because the bad guys are always trying to come up with new ways to steal information off your network, those firewalls are constantly being updated with the latest threat protection. And so we do that for them on their behalf, and they don't have to worry about it. With that service, we also send them a monthly report that summarizes the usage of that firewall, the traffic coming into the network and traffic going out to the network. So that helps them also manage and monitor how they're using our services and how they're using their network internally as well as externally.
It's a replacement for a firewall that we already had in place that's becoming outdated. So we needed to update the firewall, but it also will provide us with, I think, better connectivity. It gives us better protection of the data that we have behind the firewall, as we say, so that the information that we're protecting stays inside our network and is secured from any outside hacker or anybody trying to get a hold of information that they shouldn't get a hold of. So we're actually very much looking forward to that firewall upgrade this week, because I think it will give us better performance than what we've had before. We actually have two separate networks. One, because there's very little, probably banking and healthcare are the two industries that are most concerned about security of the information that they host. Financial information and healthcare information are the things that people worry about the most. So when somebody's in the hospital, either as a guest or as a patient, as time has gone by, we all become more dependent on our toys, on our devices, and we all want connectivity to the internet and to other technology applications and so forth. From a security standpoint, we're very hesitant to allow outsiders, if you will, guests and patients, to access our network, because we don't want them to bring viruses and malware and other things like that into our servers and so forth. So what we've actually done, again in partnership with Nex-Tech, is that we've established two separate networks, two separate internet networks. One is our secure network for our uses, and then we have a public domain guest network throughout the facility that recently was upgraded to make it a Nex-Tech hotspot, so that anywhere in the facility here now, whether it's in the wellness center or whether it's patients that are in the hospital or their family members that are here visiting them or whatever, can access that internet via Nex-Tech's hotspot throughout the hospital. There's several things as far as the new hospital is concerned. The big news in town is that very recently we put the question in an advisory fashion out to the voters in the county. We have been working for actually several years on a plan to update our facilities. And our board decided that the best way we could update our facilities would be to build actually a full replacement facility. So that's the direction that we've been going with our planning. And we felt like it was very important to communicate with the community what our plans were, what the cost was, how we were going to pay for it, and what our timeline was. And so the Public Building Commission, which is the entity that will actually issue the bonds for the first part of the project, wanted reassurance that the voters in the county were supportive of spending the amount of money that we're talking about for the project. And so we arranged for this advisory vote it was done by a mail ballot. And we were extremely pleased with both the rate of return and with the way the vote came out. The votes were counted last week, and we had a much higher return than is normal for mail ballot. They tell us that it's fairly common if a county or a city or whatever mails out a ballot to the registered voters, they normally plan on somewhere around a 30% return rate, that about 30% of the registered voters will return those ballots. Our return rate was in excess of 60% here. So we had a very good response from the people in the community, and 80% of the people who voted in favor of the project, which is huge. That's a huge margin, indicating that they're in favor of us moving forward with the project.
That's very impressive.
Part of the reason why we feel like we were able to get that level of support was because we were very careful to be as open as we could and explain to the community how we're going to be able to pay for this project. A key piece of that openness and that communication with the community was that we scheduled a whole series of town hall meetings in the various communities in Smith County to explain the project to the people who came to those. In partnership with USD 237 and Nex-Tech, the two town hall meetings that we hosted in Smith Center were held at the high school, where the broadcast capability exists, and we broadcast both of those town hall meetings live. Plus, we put links to them on. They continue to be rebroadcast on Nex-Tech's public access channel, and then we put links to them on our website so they could access them through YouTube. Just one more piece of that internet technology that we've all gotten used to. But we had lots of people in the area tell us that they had been able to watch the presentations on that programming that was done through Nex-Tech, and that was, I think, a big piece of why we had such a high level of support. Everybody needs to know, government needs to be open to the people, and the information needs to be clear and straightforward, and that's what we tried to do with our presentations, was present the information in a way that made sense, that people could understand it, and get it as widely disseminated as we could. And I've never lived in a community before where the public access TV that's available to cable subscribers through Nex-Tech works as well as it does in conjunction with the schools. So Greg Kelch, the principal at the high school here, and the school district, USD 237, it was their idea to do this, and it was just absolutely phenomenal the way it worked. Nex-Tech had staff there to help with the broadcast the nights that we did the town hall meetings, and then they continued to loop it on their public access channel for the next several days after each presentation. So it was great.
So as a part of the process of designing the new hospital, they came to us to provide input for what all would be required to make that hospital the best it can be in terms of services related to not only telephone, but also internet and data, Wi-Fi, security, all those different pieces that fit in. We were able to provide them some guidance and some recommendations on where they need to put equipment within the hospital and how much equipment they would need and those sorts of things. We're able to advise them on that, and we did all that as a service at no cost to them and helping them put a budget together for the new hospital. So as we all know, technology is advancing at a rapid rate, and especially in the arena of healthcare, we're seeing changes all the time in how healthcare is using technology. we're seeing video becoming more important to being able to deliver healthcare in rural areas. And so we had a discussion in regards to how we can set up our network to best provide those types of services, the types of equipment that would be required to deliver that video over a data network. At the same time, providing voice service and data network. And it's all tied together, but the point is they're going to design this hospital with growth in mind, because we know that the needs are going to change. They're only going to become larger, so to speak, in the future. And so as we design this new hospital with them, we're going to give them the ability to grow with it.
Because we're building a complete replacement facility, what that does is it gives us the opportunity, as we construct the facility, to build the technology into it. So the cabling and all of the technology pieces that are important to us throughout the facility that we use now, we're dealing with a 70-year-old building now, and trying to retrofit technology into a 70-year-old building that was built when accessibility standards weren't what they are now and so forth is a severe handicap. We have a real hard time getting above the ceilings, for example, to run new cable lines when we need new connections for any of our information system networks and so forth, because there just isn't much space above the ceiling. But in the new facility, from the get-go, we'll design that into how the building is built. And Nex-Tech has already stepped up and helped provide some information for what needs to be included in those building plans and so forth. And we'll continue to use them for input with the construction of the new facility. But the reality is that having the cloud-based technology that we do now with the remote servers will make that transition much easier, because what we'll have to do is, instead of picking up the physical server and moving it from one place to another, we just have to connect to it by the internet from a new location. Makes it much easier to do.
As a part of the hospital using our cloud services, they're also able to save money on the hardware that goes into the hospital to take advantage of those cloud services. Typically, in a typical environment in the past, inside a data network, you have a desktop PC that would run on the network, that would connect to a server that would be in the network. With this new cloud solution that we've installed for them, they are replacing their computers with thin clients. So these thin clients allow the hospital to be able to save money in future investments of hardware, because the thin client costs anywhere from a third to half of what a desktop PC would cost. And as we advise them moving forward as to how to connect securely to our data center, they can then save money in these purchases in the future for replacing desktop PCs with thin clients. In addition to that, we also are able to help them save investment dollars on the network as well. As I mentioned earlier, we were talking about advising them on network infrastructure for the new hospital. Potentially, the servers in the cloud are going to require them to purchase fewer PCs as well. And we're going to replace PCs with some thin clients, but we can also potentially replace 2 or 3 PCs with one thin client. So they're going to be able to save dollars into the future that way as well. The thin clients will have to be replaced, but they don't have to be rotated out every 3 to 5 years per se as a PC would, 3 or 4 years. A thin client should last at least 5 years, maybe longer, because all it's doing is making that connection from your desk to the server in the cloud. The bottleneck there to that connection is your infrastructure between you and the cloud, meaning switches and routers. And right now, like I mentioned, we're putting in the Total Network Security Appliance, which will allow them up to gigabit connectivity. Currently, they're using 100 megabit, but this will give them the ability to grow with bandwidth as they need to, and all their switches will be gigabit switches as well internally, so they'll be able to connect up at a gigabit from the terminal server in our data center out to their thin clients and their desks and at their stations at the hospital.
I said earlier that security of our data is absolutely critical to our ability to do business, to operate. And in a larger city, there tends to be a broader array of providers available who can contract to provide that secure networking and so forth. In a rural area, many small hospitals struggle to have both the expertise, the personnel, and the technology, as well as the broadband access, to allow them to stay current with the world the way we're doing business now. We don't have those problems because we have broadband access that's better than what's available in the cities sometimes, and we have good technical expertise available on the part of the tech support staff that Nex-Tech has for us, both from the standpoint of kind of the nuts and bolts type of stuff that when something goes wrong at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's somebody immediately available to help us fix what that problem is, but also from a strategic planning standpoint, the things that you were talking about as we plan a new facility, having the expertise not just to be able to fix what's already here, but to help us plan what we need moving forward. That's huge in a small community.